Hi everyone, I am back with you with another video lecture, and this time it's on lesson number 7 in your textbook, Zeitgeist to Readings on Society and Culture, Module 2, Sustainable Environment, and in the second module, lesson number 7, Zlata the God. It's a story by Isaac Bashevis Singer. Isaac Bashevis Singer might not be an author familiar to you for several reasons. Actually, he is an American author with Polish origin, and he is a Jewish person. And for several reasons, we are, far away from the world of Jews, and we are not very familiar with their cultural or literary life as much as we are familiar with maybe with some other cultures and some other communities. Maybe Isaac Bashevis Singer is the first Jewish author you are studying as part of a course, and here is a story entitled Zlata the Goat. Isaac Bashevis Singer was born in 1902 and he died in 1991. So his life was exclusively in the 20th century, and he died almost 30 years ago. He was a Polish-American Jewish novelist and short story writer. He was from Poland, from Europe. Actually, Jews in Europe suffered a great deal in the last century. And you know the story of the Holocaust, Hitler's activities in Europe, which eventually led to the Second World War and so on. Jews were victimized a great deal for several reasons, and even Polish Jews found themselves very unsafe in their territory, and many of them migrated to safer places, and one such safe destination for them was the United States. Several others migrated to Israel, the new Jewish nation known to you. So here Isaac Bashevis Singer, IB Singer for short, is a Polish-American Jewish novelist and short story writer. He wrote his works, literary works, in Yiddish language. Yiddish was a language traditionally spoken by Jewish people in Europe, particularly in Poland and the close by territories. He was son of a rabbi. Rabbi is a Jewish kind of priest, and he was expected to have been trained to become a rabbi, but he chose a different path and became a writer of novels and stories. So he migrated to the United States and settled down in New York in the turbulent 30s. 30s was a time of trouble and turbulence for people all over the world, especially Jews, the years before the Second World War. So these are some of his collections of stories. Satan in Gorai, published in 1935, The Family Basket, published in 1950, The Slave, published in 1962, The Manor, published in 1967, The Estate, published in 1969, Enemies, a Love Story, published in 1972. This last one is particularly related to his experience as a Jew in the days of the Holocaust, especially bringing to your attention the horrors of the horrible experience Jewish people were subjected to in the days or in the time of Holocaust. So this particular story, Zlata the God, just like most of the stories and novels by Isaac Bashevis Singer, portrays traditional Jewish life in either in Poland or in the USA, the two territories or the two countries in which he spent his life mainly. So Poland, those territories with Jewish population in Poland, and those settlements of Jews in the United States. These were the two locales our author Isaac Bashevis Singer had for his literary works. And here the story before us, Zlata the God, is a very interesting story, which usually we can even use the expression the unputdownable kind of a story. If you start reading this story, I am pretty sure you will not turn your attention to anything else before finishing it. It's such a story which keeps you in the grip. You will fully be absorbed in the task of reading the story until you finish it. It's such a beautiful story. The title is Zlata the God. As the title suggests, it's an animal story. It's a story that portrays the man-animal bond. It shows the subtle, delicate aspects of human mind or human disposition, which makes human beings to be sympathetically moved towards animals, especially domestic animals. Here is the story of a domestic animal. It is a goat, and it's given a name. Zlata is the name. I don't know what persuaded him to choose this name for the goat here, but it's the name. And it is one of the stories included in a collection of stories entitled Zlata the God and Other Stories. That's the title of the book, which was published in 1966. And this highlights, or this brings to our live attention, the bond between human beings and animals. Sometimes human beings are very irresponsible. They are very cruel. They are very harsh to animals. But there are occasions in life which teach several individuals among us the valuable lesson of having to deal with animals sympathetically. This lesson we derive from some experience in life sometimes. And here is one such beautiful story. And this, I must tell you, is in the general background of Jewish settlement life in Poland, in the Polish territories. And the time is a Hanukkah time. Hanukkah is a Jewish festival of lights, which they celebrate a week-long period in the month of December. And here the Hanukkah time in an unnamed Jewish settlement in Poland. And the characters appearing before you in this story are Rowan the farrier. Farrier is known to you. I hope whoever works with animal fur, animal skin and animal such as wool and other, the fur taken from domestic or wild animals, which human beings make use of for clothes, especially in winter months, which will give work as the best warm cloth for them actually. So farrier is one who makes or repairs fur clothes or fur related products. And Rowan, who's one of the important characters in this story, is a farrier. Leah is his wife. These are all Jewish names. Aaron was his eldest child, a son. I think Aaron is known to you in a different way. In the biblical story of Moses and Harun, Musa and Harun in the Arabic Islamic context, and in the biblical or Jewish context it is Moses and Aaron. Aaron is the biblical version of this Arabic word Harun. Okay, Aaron was the eldest child of Reuben and Leah, and they have two daughters, Anna and Miriam. Then there was one more member in the family, and that was Zilata the goat. And at the beginning of the story, actually, it was Hanukkah was coming. Hanukkah festival was coming, and that year the winter was not very severe, and Reuben the farrier was almost jobless. People were not approaching for his service because winter was not severe, it was not extreme cold weather, so they did not have any requirement of buying new fur clothes or repairing old ones. For his service anyways, they were scarcely coming, which means Reuben was without money to support his family, especially during the festival time, Hanukkah festival time. It's a week-long festival, and Jews, for Jews, it's maybe the most important festival for the time, and they needed I see all sorts of things, and they were here. This family was damn short of money because the winter that time was not very severe. So people were not approaching Reuben for his service. So he had no other source of money at all. This was the situation. And this was the occasion when Reuben was considering the idea of selling out Zilata the goat to a butcher. The butcher's name was Feivel. Feivel the butcher was in the city or in the close by town. So if they are to make some money, especially, they required some. Here Reuben came to learn to understand that if he sells sells Zilata the goat to the butcher, he will get 8 gulden. 8 gulden. Gulden is a currency there, which I think is no longer in currency, not in use any longer, I think. Anyways, he will get this much money, 8 gulden, for Zilata the goat if he sells the goat to the butcher, Feivel. And the task of taking the goat to the town and selling it to the town was a little away. It takes a few hours for Aaron to take the goat to the close by town and sell the goat. Sometimes he will have to stay there overnight and will be able to come back home to his village only the next day. So this was the idea. Anyways, the task was put on the shoulders of Aaron. He was 12 years, He was a young boy growing up, and he was as old as Zilata itself. Zilata the goat also was 12 years. In fact, their growth was together, happening together. Okay, they played in the snow. They saw all shapes of or all phases of winter season in their particular territory, and they played together. They had their life together. They were very much drawn to each other. And the day when Aaron was taking Zilata to the town, I told you at the beginning, the winter was not severe at all at that time. So they did not expect a snowfall or hail or any stormy situation or anything of the kind. It was expected to be a safe time for Aaron to take Zilata to the town to sell it off. They were in tears, especially Anna and Miriam. Reuben was actually turning his face away. He doesn't want to see the scene of Aaron taking Zilata away from home to be sold out to the butcher. It was a misfortune that they are parting with Zilata. They were on the verge of tears, of course, all of them, but there was no other go. There was no other option before Reuben. He had to sell the goat out, otherwise they won't be able to pull on those days of the festival at all. This was the situation. So they eventually decided to sell it, and Aaron that morning set out to the town with God. They were walking together, sort of talking to each other, talking each other, um, and the God responding to him. But the God was always doubtful. Where is this guy taking me to? Was he going to sell me out? Was he going to, take me to a very distant place from where I was not supposed to come back to them? So such doubts were, occurring to Zlata, but Zlata was a god and it cannot communicate that effectively. Sometimes it puts a gesture, it looks at Aaron, looks at his eyes in spatial, and so on. This was the way how the kind of emotional level of communication took place between Zlata the god and Aaron, who was taking Zlata to the town. So both were, I told you, 12 years old, and the Hanukkah time, as I told you, was the festival of lights lasting 8 days in December. So now what happened on the way as he was taking Zlata to the town is what makes the core of the story. On the way, halfway actually, snow began to fall and hailstones also were falling, and soon it was a stormy situation. And the path ahead, the way ahead to the town was completely covered with snow, white. And now after some time, there came a moment when it was impossible for Aaron to take Zlata any further ahead or walk ahead in the direction of the town, because the place was fully covered with snow. He could not distinguish between the road and the field on the sides of the road. So what happened is that at one stage he lost his way. He could not walk ahead. Every side, you see, to the right or left or front or back looked alike, and he didn't know where to move ahead. And it was, besides, in the stormy situation with the hailstone falling, the situation became very terrible for both of them. They were forced to look for a shelter instead of going ahead. And of course, in such a situation, shelter was not easy to find. And they were walking ahead a little further when he came upon a hill-like structure. It looked somewhat like a hill or a little mound. And he tried to feel it closely, and he could realize that it was not a hill, it was actually a haystack, a heap of hay. You know, hay, dry leaves of paddy or wheat, okay, which will be, food for cattle in special. So this haystack was fortunately a very good place for them to seek refuge with. He wisely made use of it. He dug its inside, made a space inside the haystack, crawled into the space he made inside the haystack, and took Zlata inside as well, and drew the hay from both sides and covered the entrance part, made a hole, a breathing hole in the haystack for them to get air inside. Otherwise, you see, winter, if it comes with a storm and hailstone, sometimes will be very tricky and very fatal for them. Sometimes it will take many days or sometimes a few weeks, and they won't be able to go back home or to the town at all. They will be trapped, virtually trapped on the way. Either save their life staying inside the haystack, or get killed in the bad weather, in the rough weather, in the icy and snowy ground outside, and the storm and the bad weather outside. This was the only option before them. So he decided to stay inside the haystack with Zlata. So it was comfortable inside, you know, it is warm inside for both Zlata and Aaron. And what comes soon is that whatever food he had in his hands, has been exhausted, and he was starting to feel hungry, both of them. They were tired as well. And you see, in their kind of miserable situation, new solutions were coming. And here, Zlata soon realized that the hay around her was good enough for eating. It was the right kind of stuff for Zlata to eat, because it's hay. So it provided comfort for Zlata, plus it provided food as well. So Zlata started eating hay, and it had the comfort of the warmth inside the haystack. Now is the case of Aaron. Aaron was a human individual. He cannot eat hay, so he must look for something else, some other food or drink which will support him for a few days inside the haystack. So soon he could find, to his disbelief, that Zlata was producing a lot of milk in its udders, and he somehow managed to extract milk from its udders, and he straight away made milk fall into his mouth while pressing the udders of the goat. So this way, Zlata eating hay, Aaron drinking the sweet milk of Zlata, and staying in the comfort of the haystack. They continued there for about 3 days. 3 days and 3 nights. Mostly they were sleeping, eating, drinking, and falling asleep. This was what filled their life inside the haystack for 3 days. And now a sort of communication was developing between Zlata and Aaron. Aaron was not looking upon Zlata as a god any longer. He started looking upon Zlata as his sister, who supported him every respect. So this was, the attitude to the animal was undergoing a big change, right? Actually, at one point, Zlata had lost confidence and faith in its masters, or the human being's capacity to support and protect it. But now the god, she has been able to regain confidence, and she started looking upon Aaron as her protector, her master, and her everything. So the relationship, the bond between Zlata and Aaron was becoming a very strong one, and it was becoming very emotional too. And for, you see, the Kerala audience especially, most of the students will have read Benjamin's Adu Jeevitham. I don't have to introduce or explain to you the kind of emotional bond that develops between animal and between a god and a human individual in such a situation. Anyways, here Zlata and Aaron developed this kind of a warm emotional relationship. They started caring for each other. They started speaking to each other. And of course, Zlata always had one word to say. Whatever Aaron asks her, her response is "ma." Okay, this was how she spoke. Anyways, they lived in the haystack for 3 days, and it was on the 4th morning that they came to know that the stormy situation was over. The hail and the snow had stopped falling, and rays of sun were appearing in the sky. And he just peeped out and found that the weather has changed, and it's time for them to try to go back. And it was then he heard the jingle of a cart, of a farmer's cart, and the farmer, and that farmer's help he showed him the way. And this time, you see, he was not going ahead to the town to sell the god to the butcher in the town, the butcher in the town at all. He had by this time made up his mind that he was not going to sell Zlata at all. because that kind of, no one will sell his sister to a butcher or anyone else. So Zlata has already become his sister. This is the condition. So now Zlata, Aaron decided to go back home, changed his mind, abandoned the idea of selling Zlata, and with the help of the farmer who was passing by in a cart, he came to understand the direction to the village back to his place. And thus he, with Zlata, slowly walked, removing the snow and ice on the way back home to the village. And as he was coming closer to his house, actually his father, his mother, his sisters and neighbors were all very much upset by the loss of this boy and the goat, because it's 3 days. They were almost sure that the two were fully lost. Aaron was dead, and maybe Zlata also is dead. They will never be coming back, because it was hopeless. Maybe for you who are not familiar very much with weather conditions, conditions of winter, severe winter in such places, may not be able to imagine the situation, but it's true. It's a very challenging and a very critical situation that comes when in such a severe weather you are exposed to the roughness or the severity of the weather. It's sometimes very fatal, but it's true. And now they had actually abandoned hope. Here Aaron's father, mother and sisters and also neighbors, they were in tears, they were weeping, crying, and Aaron's father was almost silent, but his mother and sisters were in tears. They were weeping repeatedly, and their neighbors also joined them in their sorrow. And it was in such a condition when one of their neighbors spotted a shape at a distance at the other end of the road, and he soon realized that it was Aaron and Zlata coming back home. He announced the good news in the family, and they were overjoyed, and it brings about a complete change in the family situation. Soon Aaron and Zlata joined the family. They were so happy to receive them, to hug them, very much like, now is the time of people, Malayalis in Gulf countries, coming back home. We cannot hug them, we cannot welcome them in closeness, physical closeness, because of the COVID situation. But here for the God and Aaron, it was not like that. It was a very warm welcome that they received at home. Anna and Miriam, two sisters of Aaron, were hugging the goat. They were feeding the goat with carrot peel, potato peel, etc. They were sharing their joy with Aaron since he has come back with Zlata. Anyways, they were all completely, taken over by, overwhelmed by the happiness of their return. And by this time, they were fully well convinced that Zlata is a member of their family already, and they cannot sell her out at all, because a member of the family no one sells out. So emotionally drawn or made a bond with the animal in the context of such an experience that they cannot think of selling Zlata out at all. Zlata had now the dignity and position of a member of the family. She can come to the kitchen anytime. She can knock at the door of every room in their house and so on. And now is the question how they dealt with the Hanukkah festival requirements, their money requirements for Hanukkah festival. When these people decided not to sell out Zlata, the weather had already changed, and so now the Hanukkah situation was to be handled because they required money for celebrating Hanukkah festival. But fortunately for them, when they had already made up their mind to the effect that they will not part with Zlata, the weather also had changed. Winter was becoming severe and very cold. People required now the service of Rowan the furrier. Rowan the furrier's service, his products were required for them, and they needed his service for repairing their fur clothes, and they started approaching him. So Rowan began to get money, enough for their requirement for celebrating the Hanukkah festival. So this was the substance of the story that we have before us, Zlata the goat. It shows at the beginning they were planning to sell the goat, then the experience Aaron and the family as well was subjected to in the changed weather, and the kind of change that came over to their minds, and their eventual decision not to sell Zlata at all. You see this, and also the kind of emotional relationship that came into or that took shape in the relationship they had with the animal, with Zlata. These two is very important. So the bond human beings may make with animals sometimes become very emotional, very genuine, very touching, and this is what the story tells us. It's a very interesting story which will which all of you will enjoy reading, and for further meticulous information on the vocab in this particular lesson and other required elements for your university examination purposes, you may focus on the exercise part and the glossary in the text as well. And with this, I hope you can manage to support yourself during the lessons in this particular COVID related lockdown situation. I am winding up. Thank you so much.